Welcome to the podcast that buffs your Hearthstone game. This is Velen's Chosen.
Not all who wander are lost.
Greetings, Visionaries. Welcome to Velen's Chosen. We're a podcast geared to buff your Hearthstone game. We help you exist by playing better. I like to flip it around every once in a while, but we're here to help you compete on the ladder every month without necessarily having to break your bank. And we talk about gameplay as well as deck construction and new cards like we have been the last couple weeks. And we're going to even weave in some of our arena opinions to help you accomplish and identify your Hearthstone goals. I'm your host, NotRobMay, and joining me on episode number 66 about the Jade Lotus, we have Evemartyn. What's up, Eve?
I'm back. I've been away for a couple weeks now, but now that I'm back, that means Andrew must be gone.
That means one of us is also missing.
It seems to work that way the past couple of weeks. It's either me and Andrew without you, or you and Andrew without me. And now, full circle. Yep. Yeah.
Back to square one. One of these days, we'll get all three of us back on a show. But Andrew and Eve have been doing the Lord's work about putting the show notes together for us this week. It's been crazy on my end, and also combined with a major Hearthstone burnout. So I've been committing myself to actually playing through Pokemon Sun and Moon a lot. And I put on like 40 hours of the game, like not even ashamed.
Well, I hit my very first golden hero over the week.
Woo woo!
Yeah, I was super excited
All
about
shiny.
that. I just sort of noticed when I was playing that I was only like 5 games away from Golden Hunter, and I was like, "Oh, well, now I just gotta do that." I am ashamed to say I got most of the way there on Face Hunter back in the day, so yes, I will admit that.
Back in the good old Undertaker days.
But I topped it off with the Secret Hunter, so I don't feel too bad about the tail end of that. And I got a lot of nice, I can talk too. I had a lot of very nice people saying congratulations and stuff on Twitter. So thank you very much for that. That was really nice of everyone. And yeah, now I have my glowy hunter. And I don't know if people who have
golden arrows.
Yes. If people who have golden heroes experience this, where you're like, well, now I can't play hunter anymore because I have to work on all the rest of my heroes, so it kind of feels
Can't play the shiny new one.
Yeah, it's like I'm wasting time on this one because it's already golden, but I still want to play it because Secret Hunter is fun right now. So that's kind of a thing. Is. Maybe like later on in the game they'll add something else that you can sort of aim for. Like platinum has been thrown around there by a couple people. I don't know what that would look like, but another
maybe 1,000 wins
milestone. Oh my gosh, yeah. It took me this long just to get to 500, really.
Yeah, and the payoff would be a lot less, right? Because it would just be like quote unquote platinum, but you get the golden heroes because of the animation on your hero and the animation on your hero power, not necessarily to have a golden portrait. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because you like to see the cool leaves behind Rexar as he's firing the shiny animated arrows at you.
I do have to say there is a little bit of an intimidation factor. I know when I first started playing Hearthstone, whenever I came up against a golden hero, especially in arena, I was kind of like, whoa, this person has played mage a lot. Or, because I've played priest a lot, but it has to be 500 wins. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's not just games played. And sorry to say, not as many wins on the priest, although that will change.
Yeah. Okay, well, a little bit of an update from Andrew. I pulled up on his Twitter, and I've talked to him quite a bit this week. He has been updated to dropped all the way down to rank 9 post-show, and then dropped to 10 of his own accord because he's like, screw it, I'm playing priest. So
oh my gosh.
Andrew literally just jumped into a highlight of his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games with this priest deck. He went 1-6, so that lost him a full rank. And then he got back all the way up to level 7 with a crazy win streak on, I think this is the same deck you got your
the Hunter?
Golden Hero with, Eve. I think it's Face Hunter. Mm-hmm. It's like Face Hunter mixed with Secret Keepers and Secrets and Cloaked Huntress, Kindly Grandmother, Barnes, and Argent Horse Rider. And then top of the curve is with some Stranglethorn Tigers and Leroy Jenkins. So he got all the way back up to rank 5. It looks like playing the same list as well. So he then went to test a deck that we were going to talk briefly about this week, which is a crazy Zoo Lock. It's kind of like a new Zoo mixed with Disco Lock, and then it runs a Stormwind Champion to give you kind of a top end.
This was the budget one you guys were talking about for budget players. Like it's all like
he said he ended up with just like a 50% win rate with it. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to give another week. I want to test it out a little bit at the dawn of the season. But
I'd like to do that. Check it
The
out.
friend of mine from Vicious Syndicate who's been playing it said that he made it on a budget account on his EU and went 25-9 or something like that with it. So he went from basically rank 25, rank 20 to rank 9.
Okay,
very
if I
little
can make a little caveat,
problems,
Ben, if it's on a budget account and he started really low, his MMR is probably not that high. He was probably not being match-maked against a lot of very high skill players, which you and Andrew would be. So it would be a true test of the deck if you played it on your regular account.
It might be, but I feel like once you hit that rank 12, rank 13 window, the MMR kind of dissipates and you start playing against people that are just like pure rank. Because basically after rank 15, between rank 15 and rank 10, there's a very little mix between discount people and non-discount people.
But getting there, like getting to that point fairly quickly would be achievable. And then after that,
and Andrew played it at rank 5. So he has a very small sample size, a 50% win rate. So, but the decks he was facing, every single deck he fought against was different. So it was like win versus Dragon Warrior, loss versus Cthulhu Warrior, win versus Zoolock, loss versus Midrange Shaman, win versus Freeze Mage, loss versus Midrange Hunter.
Yeah,
so
if you guys
not really
watched
a big
his
enough
Twitter
sample
account
size
at all, it was amazing. He was like, I haven't played against like a single same deck in the last 20 games, and he had this spreadsheet of all the different kinds he went up against. It was just like amazing.
Yeah, Andrew has been full tilt into finally using a deck tracker, which this is basically what I did when I first started doing Tracobot when I was pushing the Legend, and Andrew finally got his hands on it and has been seeing some solace in seeing the win rates and seeing what the matchups are and all that. So it's been helping him on his sanity drive to Legend if he wants to get there this month or not. But we'll see.
How having all that information
Andrew update
would make you kind of feel better, maybe more analytical about it and less emotional about it, when you could just like look at all the data and kind of review your games and look at it that way. Instead
you're pushing. If you're pushing hard for it, you have to fight more on the mental side than on the mechanical side, because I feel like Andrew's mechanics are above Legend worthy a lot of the times. It's just like he said, he can't really devote that much of the volume of his games, or when he does denote the volume of his games, he just gets kind of inexorbitantly unlucky with his losses and wins, which is why he's sitting at rank 5, is because of how the wins and losses fall. You can have a 60% win rate, but if you're getting them all back to back to back, then it's really difficult to move up. So it's only pure win rate once you've hit rank 4 and 5. The win rate is the only thing that's going to keep you afloat, but the win streaks to rank 5 are the difficult part for him this month. But we'll highlight that deck a little bit more next week. If you want the deck, you can always tweet at us on Twitter at Velen's Podcast, or you can tweet at Andrew or me, and I will post a picture if you'd like. But we'll probably do a little bit more in-depth on the deck a little bit next week. I didn't anticipate that we'd have like 20 cards to talk about.
A couple little bits of news.
Yeah.
They announced the live stream November 28th. So that is when we believe they will let us know when it's coming out for reals and give us the rest of the cards that they haven't released yet, which is what they did last time.
So this is 2 days after we are recording as well. So we'll have to do another show for you, which is good for us. So thank you, Blizzard, for delaying it for the podcasters. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that's at 10 a.m. PST.
Okay. Is that on the Twitch channel for twitch.tv/Play Hearthstone?
Blizzard's channel, yeah, whatever that is. Is it Play Hearthstone? Yeah, it's on their Twitch channel. So if you follow them, it'll give you an announcement. Tavern Brawl this week was Valera's Bag of Burgled Spells, which I loved because I hate playing Rogue on Ladder. So whenever I want to do all of my quests, I'm like, I'm just going to hope I get a different one and flip it. But I had a bunch of rogue quests, and I could actually go into Brawl and do them all, and I found it pretty fun. She just fills your deck with random spells from all the different classes.
Oh, I'm going to play this right after the show today.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it right after the show. It sounds fun. Okay. And do you want to talk about some of the questions?
Well, the thing that I've seen a lot on Twitter, and we had a couple emails about, is there are a lot of people who are really confused about when the next standard season starts. A lot of people think that when Gadgetzan starts, that's the beginning of the new standard season, and we're going to lose a bunch of cards from other expansions, and that is not the case. So we're going to say that loud and clear right now. We still have all the stuff from TGT. We still have all the stuff from League of Explorers. We are losing nothing yet. That does not happen until next year. What are you guessing? Like around April?
My guess is like between late March, late April, or early May. That is when Kraken stuff released last time. So just I think the reason that there's been so many questions is for whatever reason, the community, including myself, has been evaluating Gadgetzan cards in 2 ways, because this is the last set that we are getting of this standard year before the changes go, right? Mm-hmm. So when we evaluate these cards, we're saying, okay, these are the immediate impacts of the cards, and these are what happens when standard shifts, and we lose these cards. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a smart way to evaluate. It takes a little bit longer, but it also is kind of adding an extra layer of confusion because people are like, wait, I can't play my BlackRock cards. I can't play my League of Explorer cards anymore. Mm-hmm. Or my TGT cards anymore? It's like, no, they're telling you what would happen when standard rolls over and you do lose them. But right now, when Gadgetzan releases, you will still have all the access to those cards for at least a few more months. So we still have quite a bit of meta to kind of shake out over the next, 3 to 4 months or so, maybe even more.
I think it adds like an unneeded bit of complexity, honestly. Like it's probably fine for the pros because they're already thinking that far ahead. But we still have quite a few months that we're going to be using all of these cards together. It's going to be a long time. So, it does kind of throw in some confusion there for the people who aren't, reading the news every single day and on top of everything.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's jump in, Eve. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the card reviews. All right, we got 20 cards, folks. So I'll turn it over, Eve. Why don't you grab the first one?
Burgly Bully. 5 mana, 4/6, epic neutral minion. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, add a coin to your hand. So Andrew wrote a little note down here at the bottom. Andrew's 2 cents. I know many people are going to say Trogzor never worked. And yes, they're right. But I think why the bully is much more interesting is that Trogzor's effect was one your opponent had to deal with or would die. I think the bully gives your opponent an interesting scenario to consider. How much is it really going to help you to give you some extra coins? I think it's not an automatic lightning rod, which could lead to more interesting games. Yeah, it reminds me of the Rogue Legendary.
Gallywix? The one from TGT? Gallywix?
Yeah. So whenever your opponent casts a spell, what happens? Now I need to look it up. Do you get a copy of the spell?
Oh, you get a counterfeit coin. They get a counterfeit coin, and you get a copy of the spell. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's what it reminded me of. But he is right. Some people would just kind of go, you know what, it's not the scariest thing for you just to have some coins, especially if it happens later in the game and you already have mana anyway. and they might not immediately, use up removal to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't excite me.
This card, for me, it feels a lot like a card from NotRobMay that we used to have called Spectral Knight, which is basically a carbon copy of this card. 5 mana, 4/6 body, but the effect was opposite. It was basically a fairy dragon where you can't be targeted by hero powers or spells. Mm-hmm. So the stat line was the same, which was basically great in Arena. It was fantastic. And it was a common. But Burgly Bully is an epic, so you're not going to see this very often in your picks for Arena. And then in a neutral set, I find this fascinating, right? Because now you're giving access to a Trogzor-like effect, giving you a spell instead of attack or a minion or another copy of the spell like Lurewalker. Mm-hmm. So I do find that very interesting. They're giving access to the coin, additional generations, to other classes besides Rogue, while also maintaining that Rogue can use it. So the problem I say with cards like this is they're niche with the epic tag to a point where you can reasonably play around this as an opponent when someone plays this card. And it kind of gives away initiative. It gives away tempo for future tempo. And I know that there's a lot of other cards that say like they're even the +1/+1 to your random minion is still a future tempo type of a card, but you can compound it. Whereas this one kind of fizzles out,
Yeah,
I feel like this doesn't really have any compounding
is really
effects.
Valuable at the beginning of the game. Like if you can get
this is kind of that
extra
mid-game
tempo at the beginning of the game, and that's huge. But yeah, this is turn 5, unless you're Druid or something. But it is a neutral
Then why would
minion.
you play this over something else?
Mm-hmm. This is a neutral minion, though, so you could put it in a whole bunch of different decks and give them a little bit of ramp. But I don't know who cares that much, because every class sort of has their own flavor, and like Druid does care about ramp, but has better tools. Rogue does care about coins, but has better tools. So, yeah.
Now, I will say one thing. A card out there that you got from Karazhan very well in Mage, that's 7 mana. Firelands Portal summoning 5 mana minions, right? Mm-hmm. If this gets summoned out of a Firelands Portal, you are extremely happy. Because you've just dealt 5 damage. You've got a body on the board that's a pretty reasonable stat line. It averages out to the 5/5 or 4/6 stat line, which is great. And you get a bonus effect that doesn't basically give you just a vanilla minion. So if you're getting something that's somewhat beneficial or something your opponent has to play around with a Firelands Portal, you're pretty happy to see this card. So that being said, in Arena, you might see the Firelands Portal pulling this out quite a bit.
I don't think about that.
Okay, let's go on to our next card, unless, Eve, you have any other additional opinions.
I'm good.
Okay, so we have the... I'm going to skip this one, and we're going to go to the next one, because it's a Druid spell. You mentioned Druid. So it is a Jade Blossom. It is a 3-mana common Druid spell, and it says, summon a Jade Golem, gain an empty mana crystal. So basically a 3-mana wild growth, with the added effect of grabbing a Jade Golem. And I believe they said this card is going to give you the access mana if it's, on turn 10, right?
Yeah, because you can only have 10 mana crystals, so it'll give you that card that, that pulls a card. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So... I don't believe we talked about the Jade Golem mechanic. So, Eva, I'm going to let you explain it.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I wasn't sure whether we had any Jade Golem cards out last week. But this is a really interesting mechanic that they're going to be using in the... what is the faction called? The Jade Lotus?
Jade Lotus, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of the Jade Lotus cards have this mechanic. A Jade Golem is a card that is going to continue to increase its stats every time it's pulled. So whenever you pull a card that says summon a Jade Golem, the first time it comes out, it's going to be a 1/1.
1/1.
And then if you draw
and it'll
out
also
another
be
one,
1 mana for you evolved people out there. It's going to be a 1 mana 1/1.
Right. And then if you pull another one, it's going to be a 2/2. And if you pull another one, it's going to be a 3/3. And yeah, for the same stats, so a 3 for 3 mana. And so if you continually have spells and creatures that summon a Jade Golem, every time you summon a Jade Golem, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you have a Jade Golem deck, by the end, you could have a 30-30 minion, depending on how you...
In theory, if every card is a Jade effect, or you have more generations of cards that make more Jade Golem cards for your deck to play.
Yeah. It could get out of hand pretty quickly.
So evaluating the effect, Eve, when does this card break even for you? How many Jade cards do you need to play before every card subsequently becomes much more worth their stat line? Because they're all going to be overcosted because they summon something.
Personally?
So, for example, Jade Blossom is 3 mana and has the same thing as a 2 mana Wild Growth, right? It's the exact same card, just add an effect.
If we're just talking in a deck, I would say once you get past 4/4, personally, and start getting into 5/5, 6/6, 7/7, 8/8, 9/9, and every subsequent, I think once you get past 4/4, for me, it suddenly becomes worth it.
So let's skip ahead and go to the tri-class card called Aya Blackpaw. And Aya Blackpaw is a 5 attack, 3 health, 6 mana minion for Druid.
It's their legendary.
Druid Rogue Shaman.
Yeah,
it's the legendary Lotus card. So this one is a Shaman, like Lotus is Shaman Druid Rogue. So this one says Battle Cry and Death Rattle, summon a Jade Golem. So on turn 6, essentially what a lot of people have been describing Blackpaw to do is kind of like you want to get between your first 5 turns, you want to have at least 3 or 4 of those 5 turns to have a Jade Golem-esque effect. So that way your next Jade Golem is going to be a 4/4 or a 5/5. So if you think of it on those, or I'm sorry, not a 4/4 or 5/5. This would be like probably more reasonable to say like a 3/3 or a 4/4, right? So then when Blackpaw's played, then you get the 4/4 or the 5/5. So then for 6 mana, you have a vanilla minion that does 5/3 and a 4/4. So essentially it's a 9/7 minion on turn 6, ideally.
And then with a Death Rattle.
But it's vanilla.
You're also
it's vanilla,
summon...
and then you get another 5/5 after.
Yeah.
So over the course of turns, if you get a 4/4 off of the Battle Cry for Aya, Blackpaw, when she dies, she replaces herself with a better one. That's kind of the best way to look at it. A better version of herself, because she becomes a 5/5 instead of a 5/3
into a 5/5. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a lot of stats. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
That's
like,
I
think depending on how viable this deck is, I think it could really roll out of control very quickly, especially since you could do a bunch of things with pulling cards back into your hand and casting them again, and, really making those Jade Golems stack up. The thing I liked is that they have a different art on the card for as the Jade Golem gets bigger and bigger, it's going to look different.
Yeah.
Which
at certain points,
really
the Jade
neat.
Golem looks beefier, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So Andrew
said...
the
reason I brought these cards
go ahead.
up... Before we get to Andrew, the reason I brought these 2 cards up as a pair is because I believe Druid is going to want to use these cards together. Not just because they're Jade Golem cards, but because on turn 3, you can play a Jade Golem and get a mana crystal, so that for turn 4, you have 5 mana. And then if you held on to the coin, you can go into this. So you might be able to get Blackpaw out on turn 4, which sounds ridiculous.
Well, and you also have Druid's access to, what's that give you? 2 extra mana on your turn.
Oh, Innervate. Yeah, you can always Innervate this as well. So I feel like Druid is going to be gross with this mechanic. But let's see what Andrew has to say.
Andrew says, I think this is the card that makes Jade Golem decks possible. He's talking about Aya Blackpaw. The big thing I thought when the mechanic was revealed is how many Jade Golem activating cards you need for it to be viable. You need lots of them. Yes, I agree. This is a 2-for-1, and by turn 6, hopefully you've procced Jade Golems 2 to 3 times. That's a 5/3 and 3/3 followed by a 4/4 when killed. 12/10 stats for 6. Seems good. Yeah, and honestly, in my opinion, I think Druid's probably the best class to be doing this because they do have innervates and wild growths and all that sort of thing. But it would be interesting to see it as well in Shaman and in Rogue.
So why would you play this in Shaman? What are some other cards that you can combo with the Jade Golem effect? Let's spend a little bit more time on the Jade Golem-esque evaluation, and then we can tell you what other Jade Golem cards we got so that you can think through it.
Evolve.
So we're thinking like non-Jade Golem cards for Shaman, non-Jade Golem cards for Rogue and Druid. So Druid has the obvious stuff of ramping into lots of big minions on the board, right? And then this one just helps you get more other kinds of minions on the board while getting spells off, and you can even run the the arcane golems because some of the spells will even give you Jade Golems as a byproduct. So that seems very interesting. And then you can Savage Roar if you want to go in the token route.
When I think of what Shaman looks like right now, if it was a Jade Golem deck, it would be completely different. It would look nothing like the way Shaman looks right now.
I know, right?
Which is exciting.
Yeah. I think it would be more of the Evolve, right? Because you get a vanilla minion, and then you can play, like let's say it's a 3/3, and then on turn 4, once you've played kind of like a tempo 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana Jade Golem cards in Shaman, then on turn 4 you can play Master of Evolution on your Jade Golem and get a 5/5 random 5/5 minion, or not a random 5/5, a random 5 mana minion. Sorry. So that's one way you can do it. I can also see a lot of like Brand Bronzebeard combos.
I was gonna say
that and
he's
Evolve.
gonna be so key, and he's going out in standard.
Yeah.
But for a while, he's gonna be so key in these decks. Imagine like the first one you get is gonna be like a 4/4, and then the second one he battle cries is gonna be a 5/5. So
yeah, and I think it's even crazier to think that like stuff with battle cry. Most of the Jade Golem cards are Battlecry. I don't know of many that are the Death Rattle aside from Aya Blackpaw, but we'll get into those later. But let's talk one more class about what Rogue can do with this. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about this in Rogue, but what can Rogue use?
Things to pull things back into your hand and then cast them again for less mana. Also, they have some things that make their spells cheaper. So if they have spells in Rogue that summon Jade Golems, then they can make those cheap and bring them out early.
Yep. So Shadowcaster, Shadow Step, Brand Bronzebeard, kind of the same stuff that we are seeing with the Cthulhu variant. That's like a little bit of a crazy combo rogue that you can run with Shadowcaster, and Questing Adventure with these kind of cards could be very interesting as well, and like Conceals and all that. And Cold Bloods, I feel like that could really utilize this too, because if you're getting rogue spells that are generating cards with Gadget Zan, and they're also you have to have spells. So if you have Gadget Zan down and you have a Jade Golem spell, you're drawing a card, you're doing something to the board or damage on to the board or the face, and you're drawing a card with the Jade Golem. So it's like, what the heck? Like, it seems so crazy if you can get it around there. You're just so much stuff going on in Rogue. You're going to have like the StarCraft clicks per minute.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Rogue being minion heavy from what it's been in the past, but it would be spell and minion heavy. So yeah, it's interesting to think of what they would turn into.
Yep. You could even run in all of these variants, you could actually do it. You could run Violet Teacher. I think Violet Teacher is going to have kind of her heyday with this set.
Yeah, same thing.
All right. So then we have the Mana Geode, which is a priest card. It is an epic card that is a 2 mana, 2 attack, 3 health that reads, whenever this minion is healed, summon a 2/2 crystal.
That's interesting. 2 mana, 2/3 isn't bad.
So let's read it a different way. Whenever this minion is healed. So basically, it has to survive turn 1 coin or turn 2 being played. So that for turn 3, you have to spend, or turn 2, you have to spend 2 of your mana in order to just get a 2/2 creature and make this back to a 2/3.
Power word shield.
Okay, so 2. That would make it 3 mana. Draw a card for having a 2/5 minion with nothing that happens immediately. And then the next turn you can get a 2/2 and heal this thing. So I feel like it's pretty underwhelming.
I will say, as soon as we saw the epic tag, we should have been like, okay, this is going to be interesting, but not necessarily viable, because that's generally what the epic cards are. They're either broken or I don't know where this fits. It's interesting though, because
I like the art.
Heal, right?
If there's worth anything.
Yes, I haven't seen the art for the crystal that pops out. Have you seen that?
Oh, I haven't seen the art for the crystal, no. But I think that this could be really interesting. Like, the only situations I could think of is if you can somehow, Priest can get into this realm where they can actually have an aggressive aggro variant of Priest.
It seems weird,
that runs like a hand dumping session with lots of draw engine and using Circle of Healing and the Northshire Clerics, because they're really powerful, have to have 1/3 stats on the board. I think that you can kind of flood the board, drop a Mana Geode, and maybe a Wild Pyromancer against another zoo list of another class, and just run Pyro Circle. And then you can get a bunch of minions healed on your side, draw a bunch of cards, cycle some stuff, and get another 2/2. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of when I was talking about this with Andrew this week.
Priest had things that buffed their attack and health more, or even just attack more, then this might be able to combo with things. But after they took away Velen's Chosen.
Yeah, and they gave us Shadow Word Tentacles or whatever.
Yeah.
Power Word Tentacles.
Yeah. But do we have any Priest cards we're waiting to see still?
That's a good question. I think that we might have at least one card left for everything by the time they do the final reveal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's cross our fingers.
Oh, it would make sense if we're getting some more. I don't know what the rarity of the card might be, though.
Yeah.
All right, what's our next card, Eve?
Jade Lightning. 4 mana common shaman spell. Deal 4 damage. Summon a Jade Golem. So there's your spell for shaman that works in the Jade Golem deck. 4 damage is pretty good. Usually 4 mana for 4 damage is not great. But depending on where you are in the game, popping out a Jade Golem is good. It could be really
I'm
small.
trying to find this card here.
Jade Lightning?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Okay, so this is like a mini lightning bolt.
Yeah, no overload.
But, or not lightning bolt. I'm trying to think of Stormcrack. It's like Stormcrack. So does this have any overload, Eve?
No.
You sure? What? Shaman cards without overload?
I know.
What? I'm going to double check this just to be safe.
Yeah, you know what? Oh, no.
I had a hunch that this had overload, but I'm going to look.
You know what?
Because I'm very skeptical.
I'm going to blame Andrew and throw him under the bus. No, man. No overload. I'm looking at the card here in front of me, and there's no overload on it. So are you saying this thing is better even than I think it is? Deal 4 damage, summon a Jade Golem.
So this card is just flat out good without the Jade effect, like being anything reasonable.
Yeah?
Right? Am I right? And it's common? You are going to see this everywhere in Arena. Everywhere in Arena. They're auto-pick this card.
What kind of removal do we have that's comparable to this?
Stormcrack.
What does Stormcrack do?
Stormcrack does 4 damage. And it is 2 mana. But you have to overload for 1. So essentially, it's a 3 mana deal 4. That's the closest thing. Right, so essentially, you're paying 1 more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're paying 1 more on turn 4 net. The power of Stormcrack is the early game, right? You can play it on turn 2. This one is more of like a mid-range card. I feel like you play this over Stormcrack and might maybe play like one lightning bolt, and then you play 2 of these Jade Lightnings. Because if you can play the Jade Lightning, you can get your effect out. And you can zap something, get your removal, and then you have a minion on the board. It doesn't matter if it's a 1/1 or a 2/2. You're getting something out of this is great. And in the late game, imagine the fact that you've already gotten a 6/6 or a 7/7 Jade Golem on the field, and they just removed it. And they have some sort of minion out that you need to deal with. You can play like a small minion or roll a spell power totem, deal 5 damage, and get a 7/7 out of this. I think this card is amazeballs for Shaman to play Jade cards.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Doing damage
This is
to
a
something
staple.
and then having like your own minion on the board is just good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the only thing that's holding me back on fully evaluating this card as being like, oh, every deck auto include is 4 mana.
Well,
Right?
how many Jade Golems do you think you had before that point at turn 4? If you're playing this on turn
My guess
4.
is probably 2.
So it's a 3/3.
I'm guessing probably around 2.
So you deal 4 damage and
I'm
you
looking
get a
up
3/3 minion.
Yeah, because Shadow Bolt for Warlock is hardly played, and it's 3 mana, deal 4. Outside of like more control-y Warlock lists that I've seen run it, but like early game Warlocks never use Shadow Bolt. But Shadow Bolt is also limited to a minion, whereas this one can do anything. So the ideal, the redeeming value is that this card can go face.
And if you're playing it in a Jade Golem deck, you just want to get all of those things out that give you the Jade Golem so you can ramp them up as fast as you can. You just want to be playing this so
I
late
think it's
game
good
your
enough.
Golems are huge.
Yeah, I think it's good enough if you get a 3/3 minion out of this. But if you're getting a 1/1 or a 2/2, it's average. And if you're getting anything better, then I think basically it's like 3/3 or 4/4 out of this is great. Like average to decent. And then 1/1 to 2/2 is kind of like meh if I have to. You know, ideally you're going to get better Jade stuff later. So it's kind of like, well, I have to do this now. I didn't draw any of my Jade stuff till turn 4. So
At least you got to get the ball rolling someplace. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get the ball rolling somewhere. And then if you get anything above a 5/5 with this, or even a 5/5 with this, maybe you could evaluate there. I think it's well worth your bargain, right?
Oh, yeah, I like it. I hope that Shaman Jade Golem becomes a thing.
Yep. And then we have the Jade Spirit. The Jade Spirit. So this card is also
Super cute.
Oh, no.
Pretty. It's a tri-class card.
And I'm having a problem finding these on Hearthstone today for whatever reason. So, Jade Spirit.
Looks like
this card
cat
is
made
the
out of
tri-class.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the little cat.
The
Yes.
Yeah,
I love this art. It's perfect.
Can you imagine that?
This
in
is
gold?
also one of the things from Mists of Pandaria, if you guys are WoW nerds like we are.
Yeah. Beautiful art.
So this is for any class. It is 4 mana, 2 attack, 3 health, so not great. And it's common. But the battle cry is just summon a Jade Golem. So
it is a tri-class minion, so it goes with the Jade Lotuses.
Yeah.
It's only for Shaman, Rogue, and Druid.
Druid.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to be optimistic about this one.
In the 4.
What do you think?
For a 2/3. We got to see how many Jade Golem cards you need to have in a deck to make it viable. Because I remember when people were making Murloc decks, they were like, okay, we don't need all of them. We just need a certain amount that puts us past that edge.
Yeah.
Like for dragon decks, you know, you don't need all the dragons. You just need a certain amount.
You need like 6 to 8, yeah.
Is this going to make the cut? Is this going to fit in the slot? If we need this to continue our roll to huge Jade Golems.
Yeah. I'm gonna say this is not a card you want.
Okay.
And that's just because you, in the Jade game plan, by the time you have 4 mana, like we said with the previous card, Jade Lightning, you're going to want to have played 3 cards prior. So if you're getting this, you're getting basically a vanilla turn 4, you get a 2/3, and you get a 4/4. That's the ideal situation. So you're getting 6-7 in stats for 4 mana. And you could argue 3/3, yes, but there are so many easy answers to reply to this on turn 4 where you can just deal 3 to the board. Or you can deal 1 to the board with Rogue and just trade what your minions are. I feel like it's so easy to deal with this, unless it's pulling something bigger than a 4/4 or bigger. And I would much rather dilute my deck to have a lot of the early game Jade cards on turn 1, 2, and 3, so that by the time I can roll around with more Jade cards, I can use more expensive Jade cards with bigger bodies to deal with the massive amounts of AoE we're getting in this set.
I tend to agree with you. A 2/3 body on turn 4 seems very weak. It does depend on what the Jade Golem is, but yeah. With Druid, you could have this out earlier because of Innervate and Wild Growth and things like that, but you're really counting on getting those cards in your mulligan in order to make this worth it, which is not a guarantee.
Right. So then we have the Hosen Healer, which is a little of an oddball. And if you guys know anything about Warcraft, Hosen are kind of like the little prankster monkeys.
Yeah.
And this is a common 4-mana minion that is 2 attack, 6 health. Battle Cry, restore a minion to full health. So this means is like a targeted heal on something that is damaged, and they now have full health. So if they got a buff, if they're already that stat line, then they get healed to full.
It's kind of meh.
I tend to agree with it.
Honestly, just
Does
like...
Andrew say anything on this card? Because I was kind of like...
He said, when comboed with Akanai or Embrace, will destroy a minion.
Okay. That's nice. But wouldn't you just rather like play a 3-mana Shadow Word Death and kill it anyways instead of having the restriction?
Yeah.
Or pay 2 more mana and get it into your deck?
Usually in Hearthstone, healing something is boring.
I will say that this can definitely see play in Arena, but I don't know if you can want to choose this. Like, what are the scenarios that you're choosing this over something else,
Yeah. It does have a lot
lots
of
health in Arena is nice.
Yeah, 2/6, but the attack is really low.
Yeah. I feel like we need to evaluate this more in the Arena thing, in the Arena realm than the Constructed realm, because I don't know if Constructed is really going to want this as an inclusion.
2 is not going to kill anything. I mean, at least if it was 3, you could see it taking out something, but it needs to be buffed.
Yeah, then it would be like a water elemental.
It can do anything. Restore a minion to full taunt is probably something you would want to play late game with something huge they weren't able to take out in one hit.
Right.
But you want a 4-mana 2/6 late game? Yeah.
Pass.
I'm confused on this one. It seems like they want it for healer because priest, but I don't like it. Sorry, Jose.
Let's go into another card. That's really weird.
Fight Promoter, 6 mana, 4/4 epic. So let's wait for the weirdness. Neutral minion, Battle Cry. If you control a minion with 6 or more health, draw 2 cards. So if you have Hosen Healer, you can draw 2 cards. Okay, so this is late game, right? You have a huge minion out there that has 6 or more health, and you can draw cards at the end of your game when you're getting down to low cards.
So this is a control-only card, folks. I think that's the best way to say it. This is an only control card. Now, I think this card is going to have some serious options for a few decks. I'm not sure if Freeze Mage can put this in because of the stat total. It's too expensive. But I think that you can play this in decks that want to cycle a lot of cards, but also want a lot of minion presence. So I think that fits in with the Paladin archetype. So Paladin is going to be able to have the buff creatures cards. You're going to be able to buff something. I did know that I looked at, and Brode had said that if this minion is the only minion that hits the board, even though even I were talking, we're like, does this draw you cards if it has 6 of health itself when it gets buffed or not? And if it does, what about consistency? Because as Eve has said before on many a show, quoting Toast as well, even in our internal discussions, the minion doesn't hit the board normally until the battle cry goes off. So the minion is played or from the hand, means it's not summoned, it's played. Then the battle cry initiates, and then the battle cry resolves, and then the minion hits the board. So in that theory, if the battle cry goes off before the minion hits the board, this minion hasn't hit the board yet. So the effect will not go off. It will fizzle.
Yeah, how would it
But
know
what
what its
heard,
own health was if the minion hasn't even properly been cast yet?
It doesn't run the check, apparently, until the board has been read. But this battle cry supposedly checks the board when the minion hits the board. So it's almost like reverse. So I don't know what Blizzard's going to do with this, but
it's like an after
I feel
cry
like the card is an after cry. I feel like this card is definitely much more playable because of that. But I do think that compromising your consistency in the game is a little offsetting.
Yeah. I
so
don't like it. Even though it would make the card better, I would rather it didn't do that. Just for consistency's sake.
For consistency's sake.
Yeah.
Sure.
And maybe that's
so
just because I
we
play
ignore
Magic the
consistency,
Gathering, but the stack, the order that things happen in is super important when you're trying to understand how cards work and what is going to happen when you do something.
Right.
You should be able to figure it out just by looking at all past cards and how they worked. Not just I wonder
Battle Cry is such
happen.
an odd effect too.
Yeah.
Because Battle Cry cards can do so many things different if all of them operated on the same way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If all of them operated like this minion is played, so the battle cry then triggers, and then the minion hits the board. If that was true of every minion that said battle cry, we could have a very interesting set of abilities coming. But because it's inconsistent, the players become confused as to what it is that requires them to play the card and deck test it. And then you can evaluate the card, which I feel like if you can't evaluate what a card is going to do in your collection manager, that's a problem to me.
Yeah.
I tend to really agree pretty heavily with you, Eve.
The first thing I thought of was Snipe, right? You play Azure Drake.
Of course.
Its battle cry gives you a card. Then its body hits the board. Then Snipe kills it. Now,
but you still get to draw a card.
You did get to draw the card already. Even though it's dead, technically, it gave you the card first, and then it died. So
because of consistency.
Yeah. if the body had to survive in order for you to get the battle cry, things would be so different. But it doesn't, because the battle cry happens first. And then everything else happens that is when a minion hits the board, this happens. All those things happen next. Yeah. Anyway. Yep. We talked about it enough.
So
we can move on.
The only other thing you can do with this card, Eve, is we talked about was Doomsayer. So for Paladin that wants to do control and healing in the late game, and you need to draw cards, you can probably run this instead of, the other cycle card that, what is it using? Solemn Vigil. Mm-hmm. So this could replace Solemn Vigil. You play Doomsayer, then you play this card. You're not that upset that this card dies. You want to draw 2 cards, and then if your opponent has to waste all of his resources on killing your Doomsayer, you now have a 4/4 that you can keep. And if they don't, then you just lose a 4/4, and you've drawn 2 cards, so it's not that bad. But the problem is doing that on 8 mana helps you just dig for more cards. So it's a little catch-22, but it is an option for you.
Okay.
All right, what is our next card here, Eve?
Jade Shuriken?
Ooh, I like this card.
That right?
Shuriken.
2 mana rogue common spell. Deal 2 damage. Combo. Summon a Jade Golem. Oh yeah, that's just good.
Oi, oi. I like it.
It's early, like you wanted. And it gives you a Jade Golem. And it deals 2 damage.
You can combo it because you have the flavor of rogue.
Mm-hmm. Or just deal 2 damage.
And the art is so cool.
Yes, it is good.
I hope these are spinning with lightning zapping everywhere on the golden version, because I might just craft these in golden just because I think they look cool.
I'm not usually excited about like what's the golden of this going to look like, but a lot of the art is so pretty that I am kind of like, I just can't even imagine what this is going to look like in golden.
Season rewards, baby. I want this in golden. Make it happen.
True.
Yep.
So we just like it.
So this card for me is awesome because you can play this with Gadget Zan. You can prep this for 0. You get the Jade Golem. You also get 2 damage. I feel like this card is going to see a lot of play even in non-Jade Golem decks. I'm thinking maybe even Malygos Rogue wants to use this card just because it's another spell that gives you 1 more point of damage, and then you get another added effect if you can combo it with like Emperor and Malygos. I think that you can maybe run a Malygos combo Jade Golem thing. I don't know. Maybe that's an option, but I'm just thinking like completely way out in left field. What do you think, Eve?
Well, I was just thinking of Violet Teacher. Like, even just casting a spell and getting a 1/1 out is good. So if you're casting a spell and getting a who knows what Jade Golem, that's good. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point. Okay, and then we have another Jade card. We got to speed through here. Just now that we've discussed about the Jade combo stuff, we got to talk through what the cards are. We have the Jade Swarmer. So this is yet another rogue card. It is a 2-mana common with 1 attack and 1 health. So not great, but this card has stealth and Death Rattle summon a Jade Golem.
Okay, so Andrew has 2 cents worth on this.
Yeah,
Think
I'm
of
interested
this
to see
as
what
a
he says
possessed
here.
villager. Now, I did not even think of this, but a possessed villager that might get you a 2/2 or a 3/3 or a 4/4. Not bad. But I want to see the rest of the rogue cards. They need more than what we've seen to make Jade Golem Rogue a thing. This is a good tool, though, I think. Yeah, I didn't even think of possessed villager, but that is pretty much in every Warlock Zoo deck.
Yeah, but what makes Possessed Villager good, though, Eve? Like, that's my counter to this. What are the cards that make Possessed Villager good?
Well,
it's not
in combo
innately
with
awesome.
the Warlock Zoo deck. So it would have to be with a bunch of other minions.
Yeah, and Possessed Villager is good because it's 1 mana, not 2 mana. That's why I think Possessed Villager is good.
You're right, because you can cast it on.
And I would choose like Worgen Infiltrator over this.
I think it's just because
it's 2/1.
It could
Stealth.
pop you out something that was much bigger depending on the deck.
Yeah. I will say the reason I evaluated this card so different is because I think it's bad, but I think that if you're playing a Jade deck, I would much rather play Journey from Below because you can get this out of Journey from Below and cast a spell for a Jade Golem list.
Oh, right, because it's a Death Rattle. You know what? Other thing that I was thinking of was, what is that card that they put in Hunter decks that is a Death Rattle, bring out a 3/2?
Kindly Grandmother.
Yeah, Kindly Grandmother. That's what it makes me
Yeah,
think
but
of.
it doesn't do that when you first get it. And Kindly Grandmother is guaranteed 3/2, whereas this one you kind of have to just, most of the time you're getting a 1/1 or a 2/1 out of it, or a 2/2. So it's strictly weaker than
It has
Kindly Grandmother,
stealth,
ideally.
which means it's going to live for a turn unless you use AoE. Sorry, area of effect removal. So if this was later game, each time you played a card that pulled out a Jade Golem, the person was thinking, oh my gosh, like whatever pops out of that is going to be bigger when it finally dies.
Yeah, but you don't want the early game cards in your deck to do something big at the beginning of the game. That's why you want cheap minion cards, in my book. Like, that's great if you have this late game, don't get me wrong. But the problem with playing this in the late game is you don't get the effect immediately. You have to kill it.
Yeah.
And the second side is this is an early game card because it's 2 mana and you can play it early.
Yep.
So what are you doing? The counter argument to what I'm thinking about this card, in theory, is that Rogue has very few cards they can play on 1 and 2, right? They have Swashbuckler and Hero Power.
Yeah.
And Eviscerate or coin into something from 3, right?
Yes.
Like that's That's what Rogue does.
Rogue
so
likes the coin.
The counter argument is you may run this in the Jade decks because you have nothing else to do on turn 2 except for throw out a dagger. So I don't know.
And we do want a bunch of early Jade Golem cards, right? So by the time we get to mid-game, we've got big fat Jade Golems. So if this is all they got, then they got to use it.
Maybe the only option you get. Exactly. Okay, what's our next card?
Jade Idol. 1 mana rare druid spell. So we're into the druids. Choose one. Summon a Jade Golem or shuffle 3 copies of this card into your deck. I loved this when I first read it. I thought that was super cool because you have the choice of either I need a Jade Golem right now because I know it's going to be big, or it's really early and I don't have a bunch of fat Jade Golems yet, so just put a whole bunch more of these into my deck.
So this is why Druid will be the mainstay for Jade Golems. This card. This card is freaking stupid strong.
This card
you can play this on turn 1.
If it was a rogue card.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, why isn't this in Rogue? Druid already has a bunch of good cards.
Do they have a tri-class thing where they can discover a spell from other classes? Because if you could get this in Rogue by trickery, then...
I'm going to look that up while you talk about your opinions on this card.
Well, Andrew wrote down his 2 cents were, people went bananas thinking this card was the nuts when it was revealed. The big thing that I think was missing from that sentiment was how much draw you need to get all the copies out. Nourish is great, but I don't think this archetype will be as crazy as many people seem to think. And that's the same thing. Like, if it was in Rogue, it probably would be broken because they have so much ways to go through their deck so fast. So they had to put it in Druid. But we could sneakily get it from something else.
They have a card for every tri-class. Is all of the tri-class cards have one card that says Battlecry, discover a, Hunter, Paladin, Warrior. Battlecry, discover a Mage, Priest, Warlock. Battlecry, discover a Druid, Rogue, Shaman card. The problem for me with this one, it says card. It says card. The problem for me is that the card for Lotus is 5 mana, and it's a 5/3.
Oh.
Whereas the Cabal gets a 3 mana 2/2, and the Grimy Goons, which is the Paladin, Hunter, Warrior, is a 2 mana 1/1. So it's kind of the worst of the worst is what we got for Lotus. So I kind of disagree with Andrew. I feel like this is really, really good because of what Druid is already doing. Druid is already trying to play a lot of spells so that they can get out the Arcane Giants. They're already wanting to get more minions on the board because it's difficult for them to remove minions without minions because they only have, Swipe and Mulch right now. And Spell Power, for what it's worth. Mm-hmm. And I think with this card, it's almost like the first 2 that you get helps you play as Druid because you have so many cycling cards like Nourish and Wrath, and you have your Azure Drakes and other cards like that. And this could be even further into your token decks with, Violet Teacher. You could almost basically just the first 2 of these that you see in your deck, just shuffle more because you're cycling a ton of them. You're playing more spells, and you're not getting any closer to fatigue, so you get less punished if you're trying to escape fatigue. And on top of all of this, if Druid ever gets a decent deck for going through and causing your opponent to draw cards, like Mildruid used to be, if Mildruid kind of return, this is going to be an auto-include in Mildruid because you never deck yourself. You're always regenerating 3 cards into your deck.
Oh, that's hilarious. Because if every time you chose to shuffle 3 copies, you would just... Yeah.
It's infinite.
I didn't think about that. That's
so the
funny.
infinite idols. So it's a little gimmicky, but it is cool that they're giving you that tool.
You could never be milled.
Yeah. So you can avoid fatigue with these cards too.
You just got to be happy with the 1 mana, right? That's
the 1 mana is what kills it. 1 mana get a big body, or 1 mana get the potential of 6 big bodies, right? Or 1 mana get the potential of 3 big bodies.
Yeah, and
so,
especially since they have like a lot of ramp, they can afford to be doing something that doesn't do anything right away. but we'll
And it's a
pay
filler
off
card
later.
for your ramp.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times in your ramp, you're playing a 4-mana card on 5 mana, or you're playing a 5-mana card on 6 mana, or a 6-mana card on 7, because you're missing that floating 1 mana. And like this can fill the gap. It's like, okay, I think I'm okay right now, so I can grab 3 more of these for later. Or I think I can push for lethal right now because the Jade Idol's going to give me a 4/4 on top of the minion I just played. Whoa, how about that?
Yeah.
I think this card's awesome.
I wonder if there's going to be a mechanic where you can keep track of how big your Jade Golems are.
I bet they'll do something similar to what they did with Cthulhu. Put it in that lower corner.
That's what I was thinking.
That's my guess.
Yeah. Maybe when we see the stream, they'll play a deck and then we'll see what it looks like when they do it.
Yeah, I'm excited for that stream, by the way. I think that's going to be great. I'll have to watch the VODs, but it looks exciting.
Yes.
All right. And then our next card is
Devolve.
a Back to Shaman.
It looks so fun.
So Devolve.
Yes.
Devolve. What the heck? So it's 2 mana. Transform all enemy minions to random ones that cost 1 less. So it's exactly what Evolve does, but reversed, and it's for your enemy. I don't like this card at all.
I like it
I think
a
it's
lot.
hilarious and super gimmicky, but I don't think I'll ever play it.
It's a shaman spell, so it's gonna make all your enemies... Well, even if you just thought of being up against a board that had death rattles in it that were hard to deal with, or taunts that were hard to deal with, and you were just like, I'm gonna change it into something else. That's 1 mana
It's okay for Arena. I think this is amazeballs for Arena, but in my book, every evaluation I've seen of this card, including my own, was why spend 2 mana to transform your minions, your enemy minions, into something else when you can probably spend 1 more mana and just kill it.
Well, what if all their health is without your reach? You have an AoE spell to clear the board, but they're just a little too big and heavy. You cast this, and suddenly all their health is lower, and you can wipe the board. No?
I would still rather kill them than give them another option. Because this is the random effect that you want to play around. You don't want to give them an option of being like, oh, they have 2 taunt minions. Let's see if I can get them to be smaller taunt minions, and then I can kill them. It's like, well...
Well, is it weird? The first thing I thought of was...
Why don't I just kill them now?
Up against a N'Zoth Death Rattle deck, where you're like, I'm just going to change all of these so they're not dying. He can't bring them all back with N'Zoth later. I get rid of Sylvanas, I get rid of Karin, I get rid of Tyrion, depending on who I'm playing against. Just turn it into something else.
What are you replacing it?
Something.
What are you
that's
replacing
1
in your
mana
deck for
less.
Devolve?
Oh, I see. Devolve? I don't know. But I like it.
Exactly.
I don't care. I like it.
Why wouldn't you just play Hex? Just play Hex, boys. Play Hex. It's better.
Oh, you're
I'm
no
pretty vehement
fun.
on this one.
I like it. I like it a lot. I
Okay,
do not
what's
like
our next
call
card,
in
Eve?
the finishers. Like,
This card's hysterical, by the way.
call in the finishers, 4 mana, common, shaman spell, summon 4 1/1 Murlocs.
I think they're all 1 mana 1/1s, aren't they?
Probably.
That's the thing about shaman stuff now is like, okay, I'm getting 1/1s, but how much mana are they?
Because I'm going to evolve them all.
Because I'm going to evolve the snot out of these cards. So, and I'm going to get all 4 of my Murlocs turning into Doomsayers so I can be equally as salty.
Isn't Doomsayer 3 mana now?
It's 2 mana.
Oh, it's 2 mana. Yeah, what do you have anything good to say about this?
The best thing we can do with this card is skip it.
All right, next. Jade Behemoth?
Behemoth.
Behemoth.
Yep.
6 mana, 3/6, common druid minion, taunt, battlecry, summon a Jade Golem.
Dude, I like this card a lot. A lot. So, it is you're paying 2 more mana for a water elemental with taunt that gives you another minion. Right? 3/6, water elemental. I'll always think 4 mana, water elemental, 3/6 with freeze. So you don't get freeze, you get taunt, and then you get another minion. And it's 6 mana, which, Druid can get this out on turn 4 easily with their innervates, or turn 3 with their innervates. So it's going to be tinier with the Jade Golem that comes with it. So I think the Behemoth you're going to want to play along with your late game. You're probably not going to want to innervate this. This is probably something you want to play on tempo.
You want to wait
Eve,
until
what do you
that
think?
Jade is huge. And then you have a taunt to protect it. So next turn it can go face.
Totes the face, man.
Yeah. It's going to be sick.
All right. And then we have the Jinyu Water Speaker. So the Jinyu Water Speaker is a Shaman minion, is that correct?
Yes. Rare Shaman minion, 4 mana, 3/6. Battlecry, restore 6 health. Overload 1. Andrew has something to say about this.
All I have to say is, what? What?
And all the control shamans said amen.
Yes.
To me,
I'll
this
be a
is
water
much
speaker for 4 mana.
Antique heal bot. Suffer a little healing for much more stats and cheated out a turn earlier. I love that the shaman cards seem to be pushing new archetypes for shaman and more than likely won't just make mid or aggro stronger. Yeah, you can restore that 6 health wherever you want.
So this is the same thing that we said just a second ago. Water elemental stats. 4 mana, 3/6. You just have to overload for 1 and you get 6 health. Yes, please. This will be in every single arena deck that sees it. It'll be like, boom, I'm getting a water speaker. So much tempo.
Restore 6 health is good. Especially against all the aggro decks that are out there. Although we're thinking the meta might change so that they're not as many with all these new
this definitely helps the bog champ, super control shaman. And my guess is that this is another card that you can kind of evaluate within the cycle rotation, right, Eve? Because TGT is losing their spell that's like with the joust. Healing wave or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you heal yourself for 7 and joust, check a minion from both of your decks. If yours is bigger, you heal for 14.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a little bit more of a balanced version of that.
And it gives you a
Will you still
body.
play this? Will you still play this over that joust card? I actually think this is a pretty hotly contested option because you can get a minion out earlier than most of the other what's it called? Shaman control lists can. The only thing is the reason I think this is a 4 mana minion with this effect with the overload 1 is because you can play this on 4 after you've played a turn 2 Feral Spirits. So basically, essentially, turn 2's Feral Spirits, you taunt up 2 3s, 3 mana, you basically do nothing but, and then maybe turn 4, you can play Jinyu Water Speaker. So I think it kind of works. I don't know if it's what it's gonna replace, or if you want to run like maybe 1 Healing Wave and 1 Jinyu Water Speaker, that could work. Kind of just depends on how valuable this body is going to be for you.
Well, it's a 3/6, and I do like it. Like, it has enough attack to actually remove some minions, and it has enough health to stick around. So I think 3/6 is good. And the battle cry on top of that is just, 6 health is a lot.
Yeah. It's just gravy, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have the Jade Chieftain, also in the Shaman pool. This thing looks awesome, by the way. It is a 7 mana 5/5. Common for Shaman. Battle Cry, summon a Jade Golem, and give it taunt. So this is your end game bomb for Jade Golem archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
So what Jade Golem size is good for taunt? What size?
8/8.
I'm thinking you want a 5/5. I think that's the baseline. If you get a 4/4, you're not really that happy.
Do you think it's out of line to think you'd get an 8/8 out of this?
Well, I mean, turn 6, ideally you've played the Jade Chick, right? Black Paw.
Mm-hmm.
So you've gotten 2 procs, and then you've played Jade Lightning maybe once. So that's 3 procs.
So you think
there
5/5 is
anything
what
else?
you could get? You could get 2 5/5s for 7. So you get the 5/5, and then you get Battle Cry, summon a 5/5 with taunt, probably. Like on average.
Well, on average, that's what you want, but I don't think you're going to get anything besides a 4/4. So, like, I think Black Paw is going to actually give you a 2/2 and a 3/3, and then with your 4 mana spell, Jade Lightning is going to give you a 1/1. because there's no other Shaman Jade cards besides Jade Chieftain and Jade Lightning. The only other two are the tri-class ones.
Yeah.
So Shaman doesn't get a whole lot of access to this stuff.
Unless you got a Bronze
have to run the
Spirit in
Jade
there
Spirit.
or some other funny stuff going on.
Yeah, I kind of think this is a great card in theory, but I don't think you have enough Jade cards to make it worthwhile, or we don't have enough of the information for Shaman yet, because we still have yet to see what epic cards Shaman is getting, and we don't have a Shaman legendary yet either. Because Rogue has given us two rares, 2 commons, 1 epic, 1 legendary. And for Shaman, we have 3 commons, 2 rares. So, might be getting another card.
If we want to skip ahead, Jade Claws is the rare Shaman weapon.
Good. That's exactly where I wanted to go with this, Eve. So, way to go with my mind. That was amazing.
2 mana, 2/2, rare Shaman weapon, battle cries, summon a Jade Golem, overload 1.
Overload 1. Perfect. Thank you, Blizzard.
So, just
this is great.
without taking into account how big the Jade Golem is, what do you think of a 2 mana, 2/2 weapon?
It's awesome, right? The only problem is there's already a 2/2 weapon or 2/3 weapon with the same thing, except you're not getting a Jade Golem, you're getting 1 more durability. It's the Stormforge War Axe or whatever.
Mm-hmm. But for the deck that wants to make their Jade Golems big, in a Jade Golem deck, obviously you want this.
Yeah, the Stormforged Axe is just a common classic card that's 2 mana, 2 attack, 3 durability, overload 1. So Stormforged Axe doesn't see a lot of play because, you have the 1 mana Spirit Claws, you got Doomhammer. So, I mean, I think this is worth playing because you get a minion out of it.
Mm-hmm. And you start your ramp, right? Like if this isn't a Jade Golem deck, you want to start your ramping up for your Jade Golems.
Yep.
It helps remove.
The good news is
minions.
this doesn't hurt your turn 3 too badly. It's only overload 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you to free up your turn 4 for Jade Lightning. So that's a plus. But I think what it will end up happening is if you're going to run a Jade list, you're not going to run Spirit Claws. You're going to run this instead.
Yeah.
So you can kind of swap out that card slot. So I think it switches into Shaman very nicely. It may not be the most ideal thing, but it does get your ball rolling like we were talking about, and you got to start somewhere. And I think this is a good way to do it because it's maintaining the board for a couple turns. If you don't have your Jade Lightning just yet, you can play your Jinyu Water Speaker and heal up. Wait for your Jade Lightning to remove stuff, get Black Paw going, and then you got your Jade Chieftain with the ball rolling at 4 mana or 5/5, summon a 4/4 with Taunt. That's kind of basically 9/9 in stats, switched over to 2 minions, so it's a little bit worse because, Flame Strike's a card. So
I'm thinking about what the other classes would be bringing up against a Jade Golem Shaman deck, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of
they're just going to have to be faster
stuff out there.
Yeah.
So a 2/2 weapon could at least remove 2 little tokens fairly easily.
All right, let's kind of wrap this up. We got a couple more Jade Lotus cards. We have the Vermin. Shoot, I just lost it. Vermin Sensei.
Mm-hmm. 5 mana, 4/5, rare Druid minion. Battlecry, give a friendly beast, +2/+2. So they're still working on the beast Druid. Trying to give it
the one thing I found interesting is the Vermin Sensei looks like a beast, but it does not have the beast tag.
Is it a Hosen?
So this is another... It is one of the rabbit vermin, I think, in the Hosen area of Warcraft, but it's a rare. So I'm not 100% on this card. I think that this card is better evaluated on the cycle out. Don't you?
Yeah, because we're losing.
I don't think it's best evaluated right now. I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play. But 2/2 is a crap ton of stats. It's just the problem for me is that it's 5 mana. And I think with the beast card that we have currently, summoning a copy might be better than just giving it 2/2.
Unless you do this and then do that after.
Yeah. So I don't 100% know what I think of this card, but I'm glad that Beast is getting some more love with the cycling out of,
he's got like
Druid of the Flame.
Tornado of carrots around him.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I will say this, that if this card kind of hits the board by himself, you're not too sad. It's a 4/5. But when Druid has been known for centuries of playing 4/5 minions on turn 4, it kind of makes you a little sad. Or even turn 3. Or I'm sorry, turn 2 with the Innervate into a 4/5. With the old school Chillwind Yeti Shaman or Druid. So there's that. I think we can kind of skip over this one.
Gadgetzan Ferryman. That rhymes. 2 mana, 2/3 rare rogue minion combo. Return a friendly minion to your hand. Ixar said this card was for a deck that's not common. He called it Bounce Rogue in a similar way that Purify further enabled Silence Priest as a fun deck. Because probably he got a lot of immediate pushback saying,
yeah. Yeah, the Bounce Rogue I think is becoming more of a thing because of the Cthulhu mechanic that we were talking about, where you can bounce a friendly minion back. The biggest issue with this card for me is that it doesn't just say return a friendly minion to your hand. It says combo. So you have to play something else with this. And if you're returning something to your hand, you'd much rather play Shadow Step because it lets you play it for less mana than what it currently was. Or you can Shadowcaster it because it becomes a 1/1 for 1 with a huge effect.
Yeah, the
not
2
Battlecry.
mana 2/3, but then you also had to have done something else on that turn to give you the combo. So you're either not on turn 2, or you're using a coin, or you're using
So
0 mana
turn
spell.
3. So turn 3 you could do Swashbuckler, Ferryman. Turn 4, Swashbuckler, Ferryman, Swashbuckler.
Get all
so
the
there's
cards.
that. Get all the cards, but yeah, I mean, there's options for you. I think you need to think through what cards you want to return to your hand. You want to get cheap Battlecry minions, probably 4 mana or less. You also want to get cheap, like you could also combo this with returning your 1/1 minions to your hand. So, for example, if you Shadowcaster a Cthulhu, or you Shadowcaster a Blade of Cthulhu that lets you kill something after you've done, Blade of Cthulhu, Shadowcaster on the following turn. If there's some scenario where you can remove a gigantic minion with it, and the Blade of Cthulhu doesn't die, those are like a lot of layers, but that does happen in that deck. So Blade of Cthulhu kills something, Shadowcaster it, then you play the Blade of Cthulhu for 1 mana. Then you play Gadgetzan Ferryman, you get another 1 mana kill, and then your Cthulhu is Gargantuan, and you blow them up. So that's an option. It's a very combo heavy bounce rogue. So I think this card will do work in what it wants to do, but it will require a lot of skill and a lot of cycle. So you may only see 1 of them or 2 of them in a combo deck. I don't think you'll see 2, actually. I think you'll probably only see 1 copy. Eve, any other thoughts on this one? This is a weird card, isn't it?
We already have 2 Brewmasters, and how often do you see them?
Yeah, it's a flip stat line with a combo request.
Yeah.
And it's a battle cry. So I agree. I tend to agree with you.
Last card. Daring Reporter. 4 mana, 3/3, neutral common minion. Whenever your opponent draws a card, gain +1/+1. Andrew's 2 cents. This card starts as a 4/4 for your opponent to deal with on their turn, which is pretty good. Becomes a lightning rod quickly. I got excited for this to tech against a Miracle Rogue until I realized that SAP exists. Sad trombone. I still like it, though, especially for Arena. And obviously, this is a great tool for Mill Rogue, which will more than likely be moving to Wild exclusively with the next rotation. What are they losing?
Mill Rogue? Man, I wasn't prepared.
Okay, because
I don't know what they're
thing
losing.
that they use in Mill Rogue is that Murloc, and that's like a classic basic card, right? So I can't think of what's going
Oh,
away.
I think it's because they're losing Gang Up.
Oh, yeah, Gang Up is...
And they're losing Reno. So you're losing Reno and Gang Up.
I don't know.
And Bronzebeard. Bronzebeard is the big thing, I think. Bronzebeard Gang Up combo. That's what you're looking for.
Did make them pretty crazy.
But we did mention Mill Druid. Mill Druid might use this. With Naturalize. Turn 5 during Reporter. Naturalize. Draw 2. Draw another one on their turn. So it becomes a 6/6 for 5. And then you get to destroy a minion. And give them more cards. Potentially mill them cards.
Pretty much up against
so that's another
anyone
combo.
Who cycles a lot of cards.
Even Rogue could tech this against another Miracle Rogue in the mirror match. Could play this, stealth it.
And be like,
because Rogue
sure,
doesn't have a whole lot
draw
of...
all your cards.
Yeah, exactly. Because Rogue can't sap something they can't see with the stealth title, so Conceal's pretty good.
And probably Vanish is not in Miracle Rogue.
Yeah, Vanish is a Mill Rogue card.
Mm-hmm.
But did we talk about Lotus Assassin yet? I feel like we haven't mentioned that card.
I don't remember it. Where was that?
It's a 5-mana, 5/5 epic rogue minion that says stealth. When this attacks and kills a minion, gain stealth. I have a feeling we talked about this card before.
I think the very first episode we talked about it. I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we were like, the stats aren't
so
that
it's a
great
really
for it
old
to
reveal.
kill something and then live.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just saw that in this, like, when I'm thumbing through cards, and I'm like, that card seems really weird. Did we talk about that?
Yeah. It didn't make an impression. But
yeah, I feel like that's one that you just kind of skimmed over, but yeah.
I think that the Jade Golem mechanic is like the new big thing everyone's kind of buzzing about, and how many decks are we actually going to make out of it, and are we going to put it in all 3 classes that it's available in? And so that will be really exciting when the expansion gets released.
So for me, Jade Golem looks like it's almost a thing for Rogue. It looks like with the one card that Druid got for it, I feel like it can be a thing for Druid. And I think Shaman is maybe one decent card away from being able to utilize it pretty effectively. And it has to be very early. So like a 1 or 2 mana card. Because we have a 2 mana card for Rogue that can do it. We have 2 mana cards for Rogue that can do it. And we have 1, 2 cards. We actually have 3 Jade Golem cards for Druid. So it's my guess that you will have 3 cards in the specific class that lets you utilize the effect. Because Rogue has 2, and we don't know what the third one is. And Shaman has 2, and we don't know what the third is. So my guess is that when this reveal comes around, we're going to get 1 more, and hopefully it'll make it worthwhile. Because seeing all 3 for Druid makes us really happy. Because it looks like it could be a thing.
I think that it was really good for them to go in a completely different direction with Shaman, because I think there was a lot of fear that no matter what came out, it was just going to make Shaman better. And this is like right off the rails in a different direction. Yeah. So it looks really interesting, but not as like runaway overpowered as Shaman is right now.
Yep. These are definitely not mid-range cards or early game cards whatsoever, unless you want to cheese it with Devolve.
Yeah,
it reminds me of Call the Finishers mid-range.
It reminds me a lot of the Cthulhu mechanic. Like, that's the closest thing I can compare it to. Is something that really needs to, build throughout the game.
Okay, guys, show's been a little long, all things considered. So let's wrap things up here. What do we got for our patrons, and where can people find us? So, Eve, I'm going to turn it over to you. For Patreon.
We'll say thank you to Austin, Alejandro, Stephen, Jamie Lynn, Jamie S., Kelvin, John, Gabriel, Garrett, Jeffrey, Michael, Stephen, Jonathan, Ender, Fabrice, and Andy for supporting the show with their hard-earned money. We really appreciate the feedback that we get from people, even if you cannot afford to support us on Patreon, just the people that send
Absolutely.
in emails and talk to us on Twitter and things like that. We appreciate all of your support, but there's a special place in our heart for those who give us their hard-earned cash.
Oh dear. Okay, we got our email from Fabrice. We will read it, but not this week. I got it right before the show, so we're gonna do it next week. We'll see if we have time to address your email. But appreciate sending emails over at VelensChosenPodcast.com, at gmail.com. Sorry. We also have special thanks going out to Mr. Grant for bumpers. He even reached out this week to me personally, saying, "Hey, if you guys need help filling in, I'm more than willing to join up with you." We had Grant on the show before.
Because we keep having a dropped member.
Yeah, he was concerned because of the dropped member thing. But in reality, guys, our dropped member thing is more with scheduling conflicts internally with the 3 different crazed time zones than it is the unwillingness to be together, for lack of a better phrase. So we have that going on. But we love you, Andrew. We love you, Grant. Thanks for offering. Appreciate it. You can also see other cool stuff that Grant does for making our bumpers and sound bites and intro outro music over at soundcloud.com/Watchman Productions or twitter.com/WatchmanHS. There is a Christmas deal for our merchandise. If you want to go to VelensChosen.com and click shop, you can use the code Christmas16 at checkout before December 5th, but around December 1st. So you have to do December 1st to December 5th to get 10% off of your purchase of shirts or hoodies. You guys can also find us over at Twitter and Facebook with the tags Velen's Podcast on Twitter and Velen's Chosen Podcast on Facebook. If you want to check out our Patreon, it's at patreon.com/Velen's Chosen. Same thing with all of the websites and jazz. And this week, I believe Eve is recording as we're talking right now. So if you want to go check us out on YouTube, you can. And at this point, you could drop us a like and a comment, and we'll get back to you. Since there's not many comments on YouTube due to the lack of content, you can leave us a comment there if you'd like. And,
I put it up to 720p, so we'll see how well that works.
Ooh, bump it up.
I'm going to take a look at how well it recorded after we get off of here and put it right up to YouTube.
Good old HD. If you guys want to find Eve, you can find her over at
Twitter at Finivar, or at Twitter at Finivar. FHINNOVARR, and I'm on BattleNet as Kaylee, KAELEIGH, number 1919. You can also find me on the PlayStation Network as Evemartyn. That's it.
Where can you find Andrew?
You can find Andrew at Andrew is Living on Twitter. He's got a YouTube channel under BinacaFreak. And his BattleNet is Andrew is Live, number 1973.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram with the same tag of NotRob, plays.tv/u/NotRob, for mostly Overwatch content. And you can find my extra show about Overwatch called the Omnic Lab at omniclab.com, or you can search on iTunes for Overwatch, and you will see us up there with a really cool name of the Omnic Lab. That's it for episode 66. Thanks for joining us here in Exodar. We hope you had a lot of fun. We sure did. And we'll see you and your Jade Lotuses later. Adios, guys.
Bye.
I foresaw this.
Did I miss it?